You're listening to Code Red with Secure America Now, the largest national security grassroots army.
Welcome to the Code Red podcast of Secure America Now. My name is Allen Roth. We are privileged today to have with us one of the Middle East's most astute observers, Elie Fawaz. Elie is an analyst with the Counter-Extremism Project. He is a writer, political commentator, and a strategic advisor. He lives in Beirut, Lebanon, with his wife and 2 children. Welcome to the podcast, Elie.
Thank you very much, and I'm really honored to be on your successful podcast program.
Okay, great. Well, we are privileged to have you, and I would like to begin with a very personal question. When this massive explosion occurred in Beirut on August 6th, where were you, and was your family directly affected by the carnage?
I was in Gymnasium, a few miles away from the explosion, and actually, I'm lucky. I have no injuries, but the moment of the explosion, I was there. I was few miles away from the explosion, and the devastation I saw on the aftermath of the explosion was of a huge scale, really huge scale. I saw injured people on the street because we left. We were at a cafe. I was at a cafe with a friend of mine, and then we left to the site of the explosion. And I was maybe among the first who reached the site of the explosion. But on my way, what I saw was really of a huge scale of destruction, and it was frightening, and we couldn't understand actually what happened, because at first they told us they targeted Saad al-Hariri. So I mean, we started moving towards his mansion in Beirut, but then they told us no, it's in the explosion is in Beirut ports. So we went down there, and it was horrible. We were met by some members of the Lebanese army, who was also devastated, and they were screaming, "Please don't shoot! Please don't shoot! This is a security area. You are not allowed to enter. You are not allowed to shoot." But no matter what, because there was a lot of people, we went in and we saw the disaster that happened after the explosion. My kids were at home, far away from the explosion, but they heard it no matter what. My wife was shooting in an also nearby area, and also she escaped the injury. But we're safe. But I think the Beirut is not. People died. Actually, they don't know why they died. They were passers-by, because Gymnasium is an old street of Beirut, where a lot of people come in. There's a lot of pubs and cafes, and university students, foreigners are usually there to meet up, to discuss things, and unfortunately, it happens that many of them died while they were sitting there having a nice discussion over a cup of coffee, and didn't understand what happened, unfortunately for them. So yes, we're safe, but Lebanon is not.
So let's talk about Lebanon. And before we leave the explosion as such, there was all sorts of speculation as to what caused it. Is there agreement now what caused it? Was it the nitrates that were sitting there? There was speculation it may have been military or terrorism. Can you just update us on that?
Actually, I don't think we will get any information from the state and from the government, because they stand accused of crimes against humanity. This is a crime against humanity. And the only responsible in this case is the Lebanese government. A week after, the president said he doesn't know about it. A week after, can you imagine? So what we count on is the experts, basically. We're not going to get any reliable information from the government, any serious investigation, because again, they stand accused of crime against humanity. But what experts, serious experts, has analyzed through the many videos that were shot of the explosion, they tell you that there was more than chemicals in this storage, and I tend to believe that there was definitely more than just chemical products in this facility that is used by Hezbollah. Hezbollah supporters basically have in through social media uh, talked about how they control precisely this area and the port, and they called it the Zainab Gate. This is what they call it. They go in and they go out freely. So they use this port or part of the port of the Beirut port the way they want, the way they believe it's good for them. It's chemicals, it's arms. Sometimes it's goods. It's only goods for their own business people that benefit from this protection to sell the goods at lower prices and maybe share, or most probably share, the benefits with Hezbollah. So I think what was in there was more than just chemical products.
Do you, we know that Lebanon is experiencing tremendous economic, social, political problems. And this was even before the explosion, there were big problems, and now they're even bigger. President of France, Macron, recently came to Lebanon. And could you see anything tangible that came out of Macron's visit, which was instigated by the explosion? That's why, in the aftermath, that's why he came. Anything outside of some photo ops?
I think Macron's visit to Lebanon definitely was instigated by the explosion, but he held basically two speeches to the people. He told them that whatever aids France is going to send, it's going directly to the people, because France doesn't trust the government and the institutions within the government. Then at night, he went and he met with all the political leaders of Lebanon, of which he accuses of corruption, or of which he accused earlier of corruption. And he went and he urged them to be united and to go ahead with the reforms they have pledged to accomplish, and that they didn't do yet. So, and then he said, then the money will come to Lebanon, will flow. Then the money of Cedars, then he can talk to the International Monetary Funds, and then he can call his friend Donald Trump to ask him to ease the tension on and the sanctions on Lebanon. So, what Macron can we count on, or what version of Macron can we count on? How can he give? He knows that these people are corrupt, and he knows that most of the money they're gonna get is going most probably in their pockets. And we've seen this before. We've seen, and the EU is angry about the many aids that they have sent to Lebanon, and that unfortunately did not achieve what they were supposed to do in Lebanon. So they went in the pockets of those political leaders. So we don't know what Macron can we believe. The one who told the people that this is a corrupt political class, or the president who went and met with this political class and hand them a lifeline.
Lebanon, as an American, and I think most Americans who pay attention to Lebanon, Lebanon was always seen as, especially Beirut, as a cosmopolitan place that had tremendous Western influence in it, but yet it was very much a Middle Eastern country, and there was the famous division, political division, which I think on paper still exists, between the Muslims and the Christians and the Druze in Lebanon. Given the recent situation where, in fact, Hezbollah has risen to much greater power, it appears, and influence throughout the country, what is the situation of the Christians in Lebanon? And before you answer, I saw a recent column that you wrote having to do with, it was critical of the stance that's being taken by the head of the Marionette Church. And it sounded like you wanted them to be more aggressive. But can you address that situation?
Yes. To assess the situation of the Christian community in Lebanon, unfortunately, what we're going to witness when the situation allows people to travel again, we're going to witness a mass immigration of Christians from Lebanon to many different places. As you know, Lebanese are around the globe, and everyone has relatives. And I think what they've seen, especially after the explosion, definitely the economic collapse of Lebanon, I think for them is more than they can take. So I know two friends of mine. One of them took his family to Canada, and another one left for Madrid, for Spain. And I know a lot of people will most probably take this decision to leave, because first, the economic situation is very bad, as you have mentioned, and then you have a lot of problems now in Lebanon. We are seen and rightly so as being a pro-Iranian satellite, and unfortunately, all the political leaders somehow are contributing to this image of Lebanon. To go back to the Christian community, the problem with the Christian community is that they have elected, the majority of them have elected their representative, who is the president today of Lebanon, Michel Aoun, and his son-in-law, Gibran Bassi. And the problem with those two people is that they have allied themselves with a terrorist organization. Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, and these two have taken the fate of the Christian community in Lebanon and put it in the hands of Hezbollah, and this is it comes with the consequences, I guess. When you put yourself in an alliance with a terrorist organization, somehow you will pay the price. Somehow you will pay the price. And the Maronite patriarch, was a bit late when he called for the Lebanese neutrality. Well, this is not what we need today. What we need is to speak the truth. And the truth is that we cannot survive with Hezbollah in Lebanon, no matter what they say. Even if they say that he's a component of the Lebanese society, this doesn't make it right. This doesn't make it right. To hold Lebanon hostage, even if you're a hostage to choices that are criminal, and this is not right. And what the Christians should do, the Christian community should do, in order to save what's left of the Christians in Lebanon, and to save this idea of Lebanon as being a cosmopolitan, Beirut being cosmopolitan city. What they have to do is to say clearly that we are against Hezbollah, whether in its political component or in its military component. We refuse to involve Lebanon in useless wars. We refuse to have Hezbollah going to Syria and fighting there and killing Sunnis under whatever reason he's mentioning, or going to Iraq, or even going to Iran and killing Iranians in Iran during the last uprising last year before the COVID epidemic.
Can we talk about what occurred yesterday? This historic agreement between the United Arab Emirates and the State of Israel, which was brokered by the Americans, Donald Trump and the administration. And the impact, I mean, one of the main impetuses, I believe, for this was and is Iran, which is the biggest problem that Lebanon faces. And that this was, a coming together of countries that have a common, very dangerous enemy. You tweeted about this, that this is a big story when the news came out. Can you explain why you think that this deal is a big story and what the impact will have on the Middle East in general?
First of all, definitely, you're going to have a lot of experts who will talk about the impact on geopolitical in the Middle East. Definitely, there is a huge geopolitical impact on the Middle East that will come with this historical agreement. This is the first Gulf country that signs a peace, basically a peace treaty with Israel. One. So you're going to have a lot of experts who are going to talk about this. But then again, you're going to have a lot of experts who are going to talk about the economic impacts, because the Emiratis are investing in basically a lot in technology. They've sent lately a basic, and I think Israel is one of the leading countries in technology. So the amount of opportunities that will come with this agreement are also very important for the Emiratis and the Gulf region in general, because I believe that Bahrain will follow soon, and I believe that Oman also will follow soon on the steps of the UAE. So economically, this will have also a huge impact on the region, and it will create a lot of opportunities, job opportunities for the youngsters in the Gulf countries, and it goes, as I said, with the vision of the Mohammed bin Zayed regarding investing heavily in technology. But I think also there is a very interesting impact that we will witness. First of all, maybe it's going to take time, but you can see it coming. First of all, the acceptance of Israel as a state in the Middle East, as a Jewish state in the Middle East. This will come with time, but when countries like UAE and Bahrain and Oman, and most probably Saudi Arabia is sitting on the sidelines, is going to join the game soon. This means that you are preparing the next generations in the Gulf region to accept Israel as a state in the region, in the Middle East. And this is very important. Maybe this will take a little bit of time, but this you can see it coming. This is important. Why? Because it will affect the conflicts, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. How? So what is important when you accept the Israelis and when you accept the state as a Jewish state and you welcome Israel as a Jewish state in the region, this means in a way that you remove the religious character of the conflict. All of a sudden, it's not Jews against Islam. A thing that Iran uses greatly in order to incite hatred and in order to align all the Muslim nations around this idea. They always tell you that this is a religious idea. We want to go and we want to pray in Jerusalem. This is always about religion. So what's happening now all of a sudden is that slowly people will detach themselves from this religious character, and then this conflict will become what it should become: political, territorial, name it what you want. But it's not religious. It's not about absolute truths. It's not about gods. It's about human fighting over a territory, over an identity, over economic issues. And then, if this is the case, then we might be able to find a just solution for this conflict. If we remove God from this equation, then things will become easier to solve.
Very important aspect of this. Thank you for that analysis. The last part, as you said, the first part, a lot of people will be talking about, but this particular point is extremely important. And before he was prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu wrote a book called A Place Among the Nations. And he wasn't talking about forcing the nations to become Jewish. He was talking about acting as and being accepted as a normal political state with an identity, like all the others have an identity. In terms of, have you seen any responses from Hezbollah or from Iran about this particular deal that was announced yesterday?
I read in Al-Sharq Al-Awsat that Hamas and Fatah and Iran basically refused this agreement. And it's silly because, as I know, the UAE is an independent country, and it takes decision according to its interest, and you cannot refuse whatever they have chosen to do. I mean, maybe you can criticize, but refusing the agreement is takes us back to 1979 with the visit of Anwar Sadat to Jerusalem, and then the problems that it has created around the world. But we should treat this as being very special to the United Arab Emirates, and this is the decision of the leaders there. Iran has nothing to do about it. If it doesn't want to make peace with Israel, then this is the choice of Iran. Fatah and Hamas, this is their choice, whatever they want to do. But they have to respect the independence, and they have to respect the decision of the United Arab Emirates. As for the social media, some were excited. I think people from the Gulf countries were excited and were happy. And then you have some who were still stuck in 1948, although they are young and they represent the young generation, but they are still stuck there and saying that cannot be, cannot happen and whatever. But I want to share with you one thing. One time I was sitting with, I was invited as a journalist to sit with Abu Mazen, and we were talking about the peace process. This was maybe 7-8 years ago. And I remember he said something very interesting at the time. So I don't know what made him change his mind. But he told us, because people were asking him, why don't you adopt Hezbollah's method? And he told them that Lebanon is Lebanon and Palestine is Palestine. And the decision is ours. We see what's best for us, and then accordingly we act. But he said something very interesting. He said that one of the biggest mistakes is refusing the 1948 UN resolution. That's what he said. And I thought, okay, here you go. This is someone who at least learned the lesson. But unfortunately, I don't know now what's happening with him. But I think he will come back to his senses, and he has to act for the Palestinians. And regardless of what the others say, regardless of what the Arab states believe, he has to act in the best interest of the Palestinians. And the best interest of the Palestinians is peace with Israel.
You're aware that America is engaged in a presidential election. One of the major policy differences between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is over the Iran nuclear deal. Biden has made it very clear that he would want to repair the deal that Trump has disrupted. From your perspective, and from the perspective of the Middle East, do you think going back is a good idea, a bad idea? Do you think that pressuring Iran, as the Trump administration is doing, is in fact the way forward, the future?
I think what President Trump did, I believe, was the right thing to do, reorganizing American policies in the Middle East. Who are the friends? Who are the enemies? This was clear for him. And I think the assassination of Qasem Soleimani was one of his best foreign policy moves, because what he declared then is that he has the power, but then he will use it whenever it's necessary. Because when you want to negotiate with another party, you need to have all the elements at your side, all the positive elements at your side. And then because President Obama never used, he only threatened to use power, but he never used it. But I think that the administration, Trump's administration, has been very clear regarding the Middle East, very clear regarding renewing the ties between allies, Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries, Israel, and then stating who's the enemy, Iran. The list goes on and goes on with the terrorist operation that Iran has sponsored or has been involved in directly. We go back to the AMIA bombings in Argentina, all the way to Burgas, all the way to what happened in Beirut a week ago, or 6-7 days, 8 days ago. This is also a terrorist action that happened and that killed innocent people. So we're dealing with a terrorist country that is sponsoring terrorist organization and that is doing criminal and illegal activities. So yes, Trump's administration has done the right thing, and pressuring Iran is the right thing to do, because this regime cannot go on. This regime cannot go on sponsoring terrorism in the region. And I live in Beirut, and I can tell you, we witness terrorism every day. People are being silenced. People are being imprisoned for saying what they want to say. So this is the good strategy. It's a good strategy, and it should continue. But then again, you have three major actors in the region. Definitely the United States, but you have Israel that has a say in the future of Iran in the region and the regime, and they have acted, in that regard. The Natanz bombing, the destruction of Natanz, and the so many accidents that happened that we don't know how they happened. And then if you go back 2 years ago, they went into Tehran and they stole 300 or 400,000 documents that I think helped them a lot in assessing the nuclear program that Iran is harming. So you have Israel, but then again you have the Gulf states also involved in this matter, and led by Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia was very clear and condemning Iran, condemning the regime there. And then you have Iran as well. So yes, America can decide if Trump is not elected, but it's going to be very, very difficult to go back to the GCPOA and to go back to the times where Iran has been given money and has been welcomed to the world community and the UN and elsewhere. It's going to be very hard because the economic situation is different, and because the players today cannot take the players in the region. I mean, they cannot take 4 more years of Obama. They can't. So this might escalate. If Trump is not elected, my point is that this might escalate into a war. If Trump is elected, then I think the Iranians will not have much choice but to go and negotiate, unless they want to commit suicide.
Let them go. Let them take that path. First off, I want to thank you very much for educating us. But before we leave, I would like to ask you, there is something that in fact unites the world, and it's called the coronavirus.
Yes.
And we here in the United States had a complete lockdown. We still do, to a certain degree, have lockdowns, et cetera, et cetera. How did the coronavirus impact on Lebanon?
We have a very, very, very bad economic situation. Inflation, the local currency has lost, I think, something like 65 to 70% of its power. Unemployment was really, really high. And then we had the corona on top of all of this. And then you have an incompetent government in Lebanon. Plus you have the boycott of the Gulf states, and then you have the American sanctions that are watching what's the financial and the economic situation in Lebanon clearly, because all of a sudden they have discovered the Ponzi scheme that Lebanon has been doing for ages now. Okay, so then we had the coronavirus. I think the situation was bad enough, but then it added more to the difficult situation. You had more business going. You have more companies going out of business, laying out people, and then the big problem was the exchange rate, because for 30 years the Lebanese pound was pegged on the dollar for 1,500 liras. But then now we have a black market all of a sudden, and if you want to sell $1, you sell it for 9,000, 10,000, 7,000. Yes, but nonetheless, If you go to the bank, it's still 1,500. Go figure out. So it impacted Lebanon in a very serious matter, but it added to the very difficult situation that we are living. And now, unfortunately, we're having a rise in the numbers of people that are being tested positive with the coronavirus. Although Hezbollah's Minister of Health went to Baalbek and he was received as a hero, and he danced the local Dabke dance to celebrate his victory over coronavirus. 2 weeks later, we had a surge in the number of people tested positive. Now we have 300 cases a day. So
Right.
yes.
It's a real challenge. Well, Elie, you last year actually invited me to come to Beirut. You've done a good job in convincing me this is not the time to come. Not that I can leave the United States because of the coronavirus. But in fact, I look forward to seeing you sometime in the near future, hopefully. And that when you come to the United States, there's an open door for you to come to our house. And I would love to entertain you and host you. And this has been a fantastic, it's been an education in terms of the situation in the Middle East, in Lebanon. And I wish you all the best, you and your family. Thank you. Continued good health. And maybe sometime in the near future, you'll consent to come back on and chat with us.
It's a great honor. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and it's always interesting to speak to you. And you know how to bring ideas out of people and thoughts out of people. You're great at that, and I'm really happy to know you, to have known you, and to have met with you in New York. And I look forward to meet again with you and have those long discussions that we had a year ago. So thank you for having me, first of all, and I'm glad that you're in a great shape and good health. And we send you lots of love from Lebanon to you and all your family and all your friends.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Code Red Podcast. Be sure to click subscribe to stay up to date and be the first to hear about our future podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Code Red Podcast on Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube.